Hello, everybody. My name is Rafael,
And I'm Julio.
and this is our show, Rebuild It with PG, where we talk about one of Florida's largest industries, concrete restoration. Today, we're going to talk about what exactly is concrete restoration, how do you get into it, what are the requirements, licensing mostly, and just the very beginnings of this first episode. So, what is concrete restoration? It's basically a subcategory of construction. There's different types of construction. You have new constructions where you're building skyscrapers from the ground up or any other kind of structure. Concrete restoration is you're working on an existing structure. You're basically working mostly on the outside. This is addressing any structural issues, cracks, delaminations, concrete is falling off. That is working on the exterior mostly. It doesn't have a lot to do with the interior renovations. Sometimes it includes items such as switching out doors, switching out railings, and usually also includes, for most of these larger contracts, repainting the entire building once you're done, so it doesn't all look like a patchwork of concrete everywhere. It's a pretty large industry in Florida. I mean, think about it. It's a peninsula, right? You have water surrounded on three different sides, not just any water, it's seawater. What happens with seawater is the water becomes evaporated, salt becomes lodged in the air. The wind blows it inward, usually into the land, and that salty air, for lack of a better word, will eventually penetrate. The chlorides will penetrate the concrete and they will oxidate or rust the steel reinforcement, the rebar that's inside the concrete. Once that oxidates or rusts, it expands, and because concrete is rigid, doesn't bend or flex, it cracks. Sometimes, even once it's cracked, doesn't reach the outside yet. So you may already have an issue in a building and may not see it for months or years at a time.
Yep. We have to think the where we are located. Like Rafael stated, we're in a peninsula, South Florida, and we are exposed to the elements, not only the seawater, which is the number one, but also there's a lot of construction going on, and there's always particle in the air that produce oxidation. So that's when the process start happening, and that's where we actually attack.
It's not only that, there's also regulations down here that the buildings, after they reach a certain age, usually 40 years, they go through what's called a 40-year recertification, where an engineer comes by, they evaluate the building, and the buildings have to be, by Florida law at that point, they have to have maintenance and the proper repairs. Especially those laws have tightened now, especially after the Champlain Towers incident.
That was a big wake up for the building departments.
Oh yeah,
Because they were actually behind on the repairs that needed to be done on this building, covering it up with painting or just doing the painting part of it and pushing away what really needs to get done.
So the building department has definitely increased. They've cracked down a lot on that. So there's a lot more restoration going on now. But we'll talk about how do you get into it, what it takes to get into it, mostly the licensing requirements. One of the best licenses you can get, you either have to hire somebody or get it yourself, is the general contractor. There are, like I mentioned, some of the contracts that we do, some of the work that needs to be done does sometimes include a plumbing scope of work or even electrical items. And yes, you do need electrical contractors at that point, pool contractors if you're doing the renovation of a pool, or plumbing contractors. But at the end of the day, the person that pulls the permit, the person that starts the work and is supposed to oversee, basically the person that as a client you would hire to perform the work on a building, on the restoration, is the general contractor. You're supposed to know a little bit of everything, mostly on the structural end, but you are in charge as a general contractor of heading the job, of pulling the permit, and you are ultimately responsible for the work that your crew does. So what does it take to be a general contractor? For one, you have to be 18 years old. You don't have 16-year-old general contractors out there performing work. Second, you have to have a credit score minimum of 660 or have completed a 14-hour financial responsibility course. We'll get into what does that have to do? Why do you need to have that credit score if you're pulling permits? You will get fingerprinted. You will have a background check ran on you because there is a lot of responsibility that comes with being a general contractor. You need a minimum of 4 years field experience. Now, if you've gone to college, you have a degree, or if you've served in the armed forces, you have military experience, you can substitute 3 out of the 4 years. You can substitute it with college or military experience.
So you get credit depending on how many years. Okay.
Yeah, so if you do maybe like a 3-year college track where you get a bachelor's, normally about 3 years, you can substitute 3 years of field experience with college experience. And if you do 4 to 5 years in the military, minimum 3, you can substitute a maximum of 3 years. You still need at least 1 year field experience in construction. You're going to be a general contractor. You need at least 1 year. But within that year or 4 years, whichever way you go, you have to have experience in subjects such as steel erection, foundation or slabs greater than 20,000 square feet, precast concrete structures, masonry walls, so CMU block walls, elevated slabs, columns, and formwork for structural reinforced concrete. As I said, it's mostly the structural part that you really need experience in as a general contractor, but the knowledge that you'll receive is a little bit of everything. You'll go through regulations on a bunch of different subjects.
So when you become a general contractor, can you specialize in one area of the construction, being a general contractor?
No, it's not like a doctorate, or like being a medical doctor where you go to college, you do your residency for a couple years, and within that residency, you do the different types of specialties, cosmetics, surgery, family. You go through everything, and then at the end, you decide what kind of doctor you really want to be. With general contractors, you just get a general base knowledge. There's no specialization. Everybody takes the same test.
So you got to have knowledge of all the field that have to do with construction in some way.
Yes. Now, not just so this involves new constructions as well, general construction, because you're also going to need a general contractor when you're building a skyscraper or when you're laying out a land, you're building a mall or whatever. It covers all of that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So once everyone takes the same test, afterwards, then you decide to become part of a company, and then that company will usually specialize in something. But
so it's a complex test that you have to
yes.
go through a lot. What's your experience? What do you went through to become a GC?
Well, the test itself, there's technically 3 exams. To get any contractor license, whether it's plumbing, electrical, pool, general contractor, HVAC, mechanical, doesn't matter. You have to do the business and finance test. It's a pretty short test. It's only like 2 books. One deals with just the basics of accounting. You have to be able to know how to work your books. What's the difference between a credit and a debit? How do you balance out your accounts, accrual basis, cash basis? Very, very overhead general accounting knowledge. You're not going to become a bookkeeper after doing that exam. And then just basic like AIA format. AIA is the standard format for most contracts and documents when it comes to construction. I believe it's the Architects Institute of America, if I'm not mistaken. I'll verify that one. But there's basically a format created to have paperwork that directly communicates between architects or engineers, the contractor, and the owner in a language all 3 can understand. That knowledge is what you take in that exam, and every single contracting license you want to get, even if you have multiple, you have to do that exam for every single one. Now, you only have to do that exam.
So you do it once?
Yeah, you only do the exam once.
If you get other license, you don't have to okay.
Yes, they all require the same exact exam. So you only have to pass it once. Once you pass it, you can get any contracting license you want, so long as you pass that specific exam. There is a specific exam for each individual type of contracting license. For the general contractor, it is 2 exams. They're both 60 questions, if I'm not mistaken, each. It is open book.
Open. Oh, so that it's easy then.
Yeah.
If it's an open book,
Well,
it should be easy.
60 questions, but they give you 4.5 hours to do it. And then you
s-
have 2 exams. So if you do it, you can do it the same day or you can do it different days. If you do it the same day, it's 9 hours of testing. Now you may wonder, why is a 60 question test why are you giving 4.5 hours?
4.5 hours. So
That's a lot
it
of
has
time.
it has its work.
Well, I have here with me some of the study materials. This is not for general contractors, it's for a plumbing contractor, but all the contractor license have more or less the same amount of books, same materials, in the same format. So, for example, we have the Florida Building Code Mechanical, Florida Building Code Accessibility. This is a plumber's handbook. This is another plumbing book. This is healthcare facilities regulations, saltwater and pool heating manual, mathematics for plumber, NFPA 14. This is a accessibility code. This is all the material that you'll be allowed to bring in those 2 4.5 hour tests. Again, this is for a plumbing contractor, but it's basically the same exact amount of books, maybe one less, one more, give or take. This is all open book. And the questions aren't going to tell you what book to look into, and definitely not going to tell you where in the book you'll find it. You'll bring all of these with you, and you, after studying, you will have to kind of guess or know based on the question you get asked what
Where
book you
to
even
look.
have to look into. And this is not a small amount of pages. This is a lot. You have to search through this. So they do give you some help. You are allowed to highlight in your books. You're allowed to have permanent tabs. Usually just a tab that's taped on there. So if you try to take it off, it's going to rip off your page.
So why you think they do that of not?
I don't know why they wouldn't allow you to have removable tabs, except maybe it usually has to do with they're trying to stop you from cheating somehow. Maybe finding a way to the tab that can open up and
So
have
these are your books.
Yep, these are mine. You have to buy these. These are mine. You buy these books, and then you take the test. And remember, it's a whole. Some of these books, some of them overlap. For example, the Florida Building Codes, the general Florida Building Codes, is required in almost every single contract exam because the general building codes has book codes about everything, right? Then they have more specialized codes like mechanical, plumbing, accessibility for ADA requirements. But you have to buy these, and these other smaller books, these will not overlap. These are all specific books to the trade you're trying to get the license for, and you have to sit there in this exam and search, and God forbid you search in the wrong book, and then you spend all that time and I have to search another book for that one question.
So that's a good information you're giving to those that are actually thinking about getting a general contractor. It's an open book, but as you can see,
There's a lot of books.
it's not easy to get to those questions if
And
you're
it's
actually
not-
start. How long did it actually take you studying before you decide to take the test?
There's companies out there that you can pay and they will give you classes, and they give you the tabs. They give you a sheet that tells you exactly what pages to place the tabs, because the tabs will be for specific tables, specific chapters. And then when you're taking the class, they tell you what to highlight. And they usually give you different colors because you want to highlight different things like specific quantities and numbers in one color, vocabulary in a different color, and just general knowledge in a different color. So that's usually how they want you to do it. And
And the color will help you when on the time of searching for the answers and the test.
the class is not teaching you the knowledge because you're supposed to already kind of know this. Again, you need the 4 years experience just to even apply. The class is there to teach you how to find the knowledge during the test. It's teaching you how to pass the test. The test is really more about how to find this quickly using the index, using the glossary, using the tabs. Because at the end of the day, that's what the test is designed to do. Because once you're done with the test and you're a general contractor, no one's going to expect that you memorize all of this. right?
So that means you constantly have to be going back to those
yes,
books.
because
and they do update them. How long? How many years after the? It's like every 4 years.
Every 2 to 4 years, and it's not all the books. Sometimes they update one and they don't update the other, and you have to have the latest version to take the test. So
it's
you
continuing
can spend months studying, and within those months, if one of the books is updated, you now have to buy the brand new book and remark it and redo it. Sometimes now it depends on the testing center, because some testing centers will say this is the recommended book, and you're allowed to bring in whatever version you want. But this is the recommended book for the test, the latest version. And when they upgrade these, they usually, when you upgrade them, they'll have in the pages little dark lines to the left, especially in these Florida Building Code books. Wherever you see a dark line, that line to the right
that's
of it,
what added to
that was what either added, changed, or
also that's at least altered. A help. That's a help when it comes to taking the test.
That's the test. It's two tests back to back, and I actually had to take it twice, because the first time I tried to take both tests the same day.
I was about to ask you that. I heard that you missed the test.
I missed the first one because
the first one.
I took both tests back to back, and let me tell you, when you're taking tests for 9 hours with a 1 hour, maybe it's like a 30-minute lunch break in between,
and maybe not a cup of coffee there with
there's not. No, you can't have anything in there. The only thing you can bring into a testing environment is the books and a 4-function calculator. No scientific, no graphing. Adding addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. That's it. 4-function calculator. And they give you the scratch paper. You're not allowed to bring your own scratch paper. After the first test, man, when you're an hour 5 or 6 of taking, your brain's fried. My brain was done, and I was so tired after that. And then I passed one of the tests, but I failed the other one. And if you failed one of the two, you fail both of them.
Oh wow!
Because you have to get, I believe, a 70% or higher, which is not bad, but considering this is all the knowledge you have to go through, it's hard to find all the answers. Sometimes you have to guess, or sometimes you do know the answer. There are test-taking techniques. But I found it easier to do one test per day, right? So I did one test, passed that one. I did the second test, passed that one.
How hard was it the second time?
Much easier. Much easier, because you went in fresh each time. And I always did it in the morning. So I woke up, had some coffee, had my breakfast, went to the testing center.
And you already had the experience for the last time that you took it. So
the best thing to do is to take practice exams, because it's not so much for the knowledge. You have to get good at finding the information quick.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of book for you to actually find this question.
Yeah, you may think that, I have a lot of time. It's only 60 questions, 4.5 hours, but
what kind of hint do you get with the question to actually
usually it's like
take you to that answer on the book?
So for example, in the general contract, there's a book that's all about rebar and reinforcement. So steel reinforcement, all the different codes for rebar placement, stuff like that. When the question says, how much overlap would you need for a rebar of this size? Right there should be a pretty good example that, hey, I want to look at this. I want to look at this book, this rebar book. The question, there are specific things where it says, Florida Building Code states. Right there, you're looking at one of the Florida Building Code books, right? And the good thing is, the answers, the multiple choice answers, the correct answer will be the exact word for word answer in the book, which means in the book, you'll see the exact wording of the answer on there.
That's another help.
That's another help. So 100%, when you found the answer.
That's it.
Right?
No doubt about that.
Because they'll say, for rebar this size, when you overlap, blah, 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 you need to overlap this amount.
Yeah, because in some tests, you have to interpret it.
And sometimes it's a table. Sometimes it's usually a table when it comes to sizes, different sizes. So that's why the tabs help, because you have the tab for, hey, this specific table 3.21 is, rebar overlap.
That's good.
But that's what the test entails, right? Once you do the test, you're not a contractor yet.
That's what I was going to go I was gonna go with a question is after you went through all this, now you're ready, you have your license, you're happy.
Yeah, you don't have your license.
What it takes for you to actually put that license to work and actually to work, because you can have the license and active, it's like having nothing.
Yeah. So once you pass the test, you get a certificate. You don't get a license. You get a certificate. You take that certificate, you go to, I think, myfloridalicense.com, and you apply to get your license. Now, you have different paperwork for application. You can apply to have an inactive license. You can apply to have an active license, and it doesn't matter. If you can apply to do inactive, and then you can make it active. And what that means is, once you apply, you can say, I'm going to use this license for this company. And that's called qualifying. You qualify the company, and you basically tie your license to that company. So that company now has the ability to do that type of work. For example, you are an electrical contractor. You tie your license to a company. That company now has the ability to pull electrical permits and to do electrical work that would be required of an electrical contractor. You don't have to do the work yourselves. You can have other people that know how to do the work but don't have the license to do it. As long as you have the license tied to the company, you qualify it, your license is active.
And you overseeing the work, I believe, right?
You're supposed to. You don't necessarily have to. The biggest responsibility, first of all, you have to sign the permit. Okay. The contractor, the qualifier signs the permit on behalf of the contractor company. Then the owner signs it.
So what is your responsibility besides just qualifying the company?
So let's say you qualify the company, and the company usually has multiple job sites. You obviously can't handle each and every single one of them. They have other supervisors that deal with the day-to-day work. Your responsibility is to make sure that, one, this person knows how to do the work up to code, and that the work is being done up to code. That's not really much of an issue, because normally you have an inspector, whether it's the city or an engineer, and they inspect it. Right? You just have to make sure that the people know the general knowledge, they know how to do it. But the biggest responsibility, and why you need to have a 660 credit score or a financial responsibility course, and why you go through that initial accountability course, is because as a qualifier, you are as much, if not more, financially responsible for the company. What does that mean? If the company decides to pull an Al Capone and evade their taxes, not pay taxes, you can, and usually will, be held liable even if you don't own the company, even if you have no shares in the company. Doesn't matter. You know 1%, you can own 100%, you can own 0%. If you're the qualifier, you are financially responsible for that company.
Oh, so it's a big responsibility.
Very big responsibility. You can be held liable for any fraud that company, any financial fraud that company conducts, any taxes they don't pay. You can be held just as liable as the owner.
How many company can you qualify with a general contractor?
Every license lets you qualify up to 3 separate companies. So again, this is why you're not really meant to be responsible for the day-to-day work, because if you're qualifying 3 companies, and each of them have multiple projects, there's no way you're going to be able to oversee each and every single one of them all at once. Here's the issue with qualifying multiple companies. If you do not own any percentage of any of those companies, you can qualify the first one, and Tallahassee, where the board that oversees this is, not really going to bat an eye. They'll accept your application, you qualify the company. If you qualify the second one and you don't own at least 15% of it, there is a chance that they will audit you, meaning that they will pull you up to Tallahassee and make sure that you know the knowledge a general contractor is supposed to know. And let me tell you, I've heard from general contractors who have been in this field for over 20 years, the stuff they ask you would be hard for even them to answer, because these are people that's all they do. They just quiz people on it. So they have that information fresh in their mind, or they have it in front of them at least. You don't. Yeah, There's no open book on that one. And if you qualify, let's say they own audio in the first one, they own audio in the second one. If you do a third company, you qualify, and you have 0 ownership of that company, a very high likelihood they'll audit you. And if they audit you and they'll tell you, if you don't pass or if they see something fishy, they won't let you do it. Because some people do it.
They can revoke your license?
So they won't revoke your license unless you're applying for the first time. Once you have your license, you have your license.
Okay.
You have to do something illegal essentially for them to revoke it. But some people will sell their licenses, meaning they will go up to a company and be like, hey, listen, if you pay me $10, $15, $20, $25,000 a year, I'll qualify your company. All they'll do is sign permits. That's it. That's all you're responsible for, is signing a permit at the end of the day. But you have to be very careful for two reasons. One, you're not really supposed to do that. I'm pretty sure it's some legal boundaries there. And two, again, you're financially responsible for that company.
I mean, anything that happens financially in that company, you can just lay right in front of your table.
You'd be held liable for that. So you usually want to qualify a company that you trust, that you know, or at least that's the one that you're going to work at. Because you can leave. Once you leave a company, that company has about 30 days to find. First of all, they have to notify the Department of Professional Business Relationship, DPBR, I think. They have to notify that department, and they have 30 days to find a new contractor. So you can still work. It's not like you leave the company, you no longer qualify. Oh, they have to stop all the work. No, they have 30 days to find a new qualifier.
That's why you wanted, being a general contractor, you want to be part of the company, or you want to know that company very well, or you want to be an employee at the company at least, so you can know the day by day operations. That way, that's a protection for yourself as well. So
that most of the time you'll see general contractors just open their own company, then they're the owners of it, and that's it, right? Or they're hired into a position of ownership. That's the ideal position where you own 15, 20, 30%, sometimes even 50% of the company. And at that point, now
you're entitled to look into the books to see how the financials is going and catch anything on time.
Yeah, if you're a qualifier and the company you're qualifying doesn't want you to look at their books, don't qualify it. No. Because you are financially responsible for it. You should have access to the financial statements to know what's going on.
Yeah, no, and that makes sense, because if you're going to be whole responsible, the least you want to know is what's going on, that we're on a good track. So yeah, it's very complex. For what we're hearing today is that it's not just become a general contractor.
Yeah,
there's a lot to it, and there's a lot of knowledge involved before you even can sit in front of that test thinking that you're going to be successful on it.
In conclusion, concrete restoration, we work on the outside of it. You need to be a general contractor or have one working for you to do most of that work. It's not interior design, although you can be a general contractor do interior as well. And just becoming a general contractor, it's work. It's a lot of studying for months at a time, and hopefully they don't update the book in that time. And you have to take three technically very long tests, but if you had taken the financial test before, then you're all set. And there's a lot of responsibility for it. Even though your job may just be to sign a permit, at the end of the day, you have a lot of liability, if not responsibility, for that company.
No, and I see you a lot of time going back to the books and looking, because it also depends on the job that you get to. Most of the time, you have to go back to those books and look and see and freshen up because you don't do the same scope every time. For us, yes, you do concrete restoration, but in those contracts, there's always thing add to it that you have to actually come out and go back to the books and fresh your mind. And so it's very complex. It's not easy to be out there responsible for this kind of project that the concrete restoration nowadays after the collapse.
Champlain Towers, right?
I mean, it has raised a hell of a bell for every restoration company out there. And not only that, it's a big slap to the building departments, because even the building departments now, they're seeing that, wow. I mean, when you go to this building that haven't had a proper maintenance, or when they bump to the 40-year, like now.
Yeah.
You bump into this 40-year certification, and 80% of the owners, they didn't even know what was really happening with their structure. I mean, they're falling apart because they didn't have actually the pressure that nowadays have become very, very visual for this inspector.
But concrete restoration, it's a very thankless kind of work, I would say, just because if you're doing a new construction, you start with a flat piece of terrain and then you make something out of it, a mall, a building, a store, a house, whatever. You see your end result. There's a big difference between a flat plot of land and a big skyscraper, right? So you see your result. In concrete restoration, you can restore a building, and besides a fresh paint job, it'll look exactly the same because you're not altering. You're just, oh, this piece of concrete is cracked. Take it off, patch it back up to code, and then paint over it. You won't see the difference.
And when it comes to financing and money to do this kind of projects,
can you imagine? It's rough for the owners because like we just put, let's say you're an owner, you can put anywhere between a couple thousand to a couple million to a couple tens of millions of dollars into a concrete restoration job, and at the end of the day, you basically have the same exact building, just maintained.
It's not like you did a new kitchen in your house or you did a new pool and you can see, I can see my money. That's most of the time is actually recommended to at least lightly change the color so you can at least see something. And if you're really in a bad situation and you want to actually really see your investment, change your rails. Do something that the owners, when they come, they can see there are thousands of dollars that they have put for assessment.
Oh, yes.
And they can at least see it, but it's very complex. And it's understandable. It's understandable when you don't know what is going on with your property. And then all of a sudden, you come with a $10 million project that have to be done. You'll be, oh my God, you feel like the building is going to fall, because we're talking about big money. I say, oh, wow, are we going to fall? Is the building unsafe? So it's very complex. So concrete restoration is very complex. Yeah. And, we want to bring you the most information we can and how to be able to even get into the concrete restoration.
Next time, we're going to walk through the 30,000 foot level view from the bidding process to the end of the construction job, just to see what the progress is like for concrete restoration specifically, how you get into the contract, how you even get invited. And we'll talk about that next time.
It's a big process, and it's a very interesting process. Until next time.
All right.